If you're dealing with pain on the outside or lateral aspect of your hip, there's a good chance you're going to get the diagnosis of gluteal bursitis, inflammation of this bursa. But the thing is, about 90% of the time, it's secondary to another condition. So shots for cortisone or rest and ice maybe will provide some short-term relief, but don't provide lasting effects. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Dr. Zach Greenwade, Performance Sport and Spine in Seattle, Washington. In today's video, we'll be discussing what's actually causing your pain, what it presents like, some positions to avoid to reduce irritation, and then exercises that you can do almost anywhere to provide lasting relief. To quickly review our anatomy, let's look at the model. So we have our low back, our lumbar spine, our pelvis, and then our hip joint, a ball and socket joint. And this big bone on the outside is called your greater trochanter. It's right here on your hip. For this demonstration, we're going to think this yellow ball is your bursa, and this purple band is this glute medius and minimus tendon. Now this bursa, think of this as a really tough, kind of slippery sponge-like structure, and it helps protect soft structures like the tendon from rubbing on the hard structures like the bone. And it's found in other places of your body like your knee or your shoulder, and this helps provide a reduce in friction to help keep things healthy. The problem with the gluteal bursitis diagnosis is when we look at imaging studies, only about 2 to 8% of the time is the bursa affected without tendon changes. So that yellow ball, only about 8% or less is actually affected by the ball. And far more commonly, the tendon, that purple band, is what's causing your pain. And the thing is called tendinitis or tendinopathy. And when you think about it, tendons are very strong tensile. They can handle a lot of load pulling up or down. Tendons can't handle a lot of compression. So what happens sometimes is when you put your hip in certain positions, that tendon smashes against the bone, causing compression. And if this happens long enough, it can irritate it. Now, tendons can get degenerated for a far long time before you feel pain. So this may be building up over years or decades, but you don't know it because you don't feel anything. And then one day you start to feel pain, but it's been building. I'm not trying to say people can't have gluteal bursitis, they can. But if you have 100 people, 90 of them plus are going to have gluteal tendinopathy, not bursitis, but unfortunately that kind of is flipped. So what does this feel like? Well, the 4 cardinal symptoms are pain on the outside of the hip at night, especially if you're laying on your right side, if that's a painful hip. Also, walking can be provocative. Stairs can irritate the hip, especially if you let the pelvis kind of tilt side to side. And then often, if you're sitting for a long period of time, when you get up, those first few steps are quite painful, but as you move around, it's going to get better. We're going to talk about some positions to avoid and modify later. That's really going to be a game changer. But the real takeaway here is that when you have lateral hip pain, it's way more likely that you have a tendon problem, not a bursa problem. These muscles also help with stabilizing the pelvis and hip with walking. So think of your pelvis as horizontal and your leg or femur is vertical. These muscles on the outside want to keep your pelvis level, as we show you here. But what happens when they get weaker, they can't do that. So your hips kind of shift to the side like a catwalk. Well, this causes your leg to go into an adducted position or bringing it closer to midline. Well, this causes more compression on the tendon. It's pushing that tendon into the bone. And as you see here on this image, the more you adduct your leg, the more compression into that tendon. So when you're walking, it's really important to keep that muscle strong and not let your pelvis tilt. And we'll cover that later, but this is an important thing to note. So with walking, you want to really land soft on your heel. That will reduce your stride length, and that will help to take compression off the tendon. Another thing is when you're walking, think tall in the hip. You want to keep that pelvis tall and level. You don't want that hip to kind of tilt in. And then lastly, when you're going upstairs, you can use the opposite arm to help stabilize your pelvis. And these might seem small, but little changes constantly throughout the day make big effects. Reducing compression on that tendon is by far the most important thing you want to do initially. Building on this, some things throughout the day that you really want to focus on is when you're sitting, you want to sit with your feet wider than shoulder width apart. So say for instance, my right hip was the painful side. Don't cross that leg over the other leg because that will adduct to put compression on the tendon. Again, throughout the day, that can cause more damage and irritation. When you're standing, you want to keep your feet, again, wider than shoulder width apart, but definitely don't sink into that hip. So if your right hip's painful, don't sink into that right hip. And then lastly, sleeping, you want to make sure that you're on your back with the pillow under your legs. Don't sleep on your side with that leg crossed over because then that will put that hip into adduction on the top hip if it's painful, or the bottom hip will get compressed. So either way, it's not great. Now, if you wake up, don't freak out, but just try to get back onto your back with that pillow. It's crazy to me that we live in the year of 2025 and people are still being told to stretch their hip if they have gluteal bursitis or tendinopathy. Again, this is a compression issue, not an inflammation issue or a muscle tightness thing. The best thing you can do is to remove compression. So if you're stretching your hip or foam rolling it a lot, just stop. You'll be amazed in 2 days how much better you feel. Don't let anyone tell you that you should. And one person even told me that they said that the pain means it's working. Again, when you foam roll that hip, it's going to be incredibly painful. It should be very obvious that that's not the direction you should go, and then focus on the modifications and exercises in the video. We've started a membership program, so if you want to unlock some great perks, make sure to check that out, especially priority requests for questions answered. So if you look at this picture right here, here's all the exercises we're going to cover. And you're going to start with the exercises in the red box right here, and the 3 different kinds, and then you're going to progress towards the other side, and you can do that independently. So if one goes a little faster, that's fine, but you want to start with the easiest and then progress to the most advanced. We'll also include a PDF in the description below, so if you go through the videos and you want something that you can print out or have on an electronic file, that will be available for you as well. Level 1, laying on your back with a pillow under your knees and a PT band above your knees. Put your hands on your hips and press your knees out into the band and hold the tolerance. Feel tension in your glutes and the outside of your legs. Level 2 is a standing isometric. So in a standing position, make sure your feet are wider than your hips. This is really important. We're going to rotate our feet outwards isometrically with our hands on our hips. So kind of think about ripping the floor apart, squeeze your glutes, and hold a tolerance. Again, feel tension on the outside of your glutes and legs, and make sure your feet are wider than your hips. Level 3 is a slow tempo glute bridge. So laying on your back, you can put your hands on your pelvis or brace them to your side with your feet equal. We're gonna raise up with our glutes and our butts, try to minimize any back. So squeeze your butt, 1, 2, 3, pause, and then return to the starting position. You should feel most of the tension in your glutes and your hamstrings. Some in your back is okay, but it should be predominantly in your glutes, and make sure to go slow tempo. This is not a fast exercise. Level 4 is staggered. So we're going to bring one leg closer to our hip to emphasize our hip. So in this case, we're going to emphasize our right side, but you want to make sure you do both sides. Okay, brace with that staggered hip. Press your legs up. 1, 2, 3, pause, and then return to the starting position. Now this is going to be more challenging on the side with your heel closer to your buttocks, and the more painful side will be more challenging. So you want to maybe do an extra 2 reps on that side, but make sure you have that heel as close to your buttocks. Go the full way up, feel tension in your buttocks, and then return to the starting position. Level 5 is a single leg slow tempo bridge. So lifting one leg up, we like to bring it all the way up so you can kind of relax it. Keep that heel close to your buttocks, drive up with your hips, 1, 2, 3, pause, and then return to the starting position. Now this could be quite a jump from this double leg, so you may only want to do a few reps initially and then progress to the dosage we state, but make sure you're really driving with your hip on this one and not your back. So this is level 1 of the squatting progression. So this is another exercise that you'll want to start with and then progress. So the first one is a slow tempo squat. You can cross your arms or put them out in front of you, but we're going to go down, 1, 2, 3, slow, and then come up. Try to work on going lower as you get more strong and more comfortable. Now, if you don't feel comfortable squatting initially, you can put one hand against the wall to brace yourself, or you can sit onto a chair as we demonstrate here. Level 2 is a staggered squat. So we're going to take one leg and bring it back. You may want to be close to the wall just for some stability, but cross our arms, go down, 1, 2, 3, pause, and then return to the starting position. This is going to challenge the hip with the leg back more, so it will be more challenging on the painful side. Just expect that. And again, over time, try to go lower and increase your depth. Level 3 is a single leg stance with assist. So with the chair, we're going to raise our inside leg up, feeling tension on our hip. Try to keep straight in the hip and the foot. Don't tilt in or tilt out, and hold the tolerance. Eventually, you want to progress by taking your hand off and then holding to make it more difficult. 4 is in that same position, but a squat. So we're going to lift our inside leg up. Again, we're challenging it on the left side here, but we'll do both sides. We're going to squat down, slow tempo, 1, 2, 3, pause, return to the starting position. With this one, don't go very far at first. Make sure you can do it slow, and then over time, go deeper. Make sure to sink into your hip and don't push your knee too far forward. If your knee is hurting, you got to go back into the hip more. Again, this is a glute exercise, not a knee exercise. Level 5 is a step up with assist. So use that chair or dowel We're going to step up with the opposite leg, making sure our pelvis stays square. Stand up tall through that hip, and then return to the starting position. Try to go slow tempo. So for this one, we're going to do just one side at a time, and then switch to the other side. Make sure to not let your pelvis collapse in. So use the stick as much as you need, but really try to think about standing tall on that hip, up towards the ceiling, pause, and then return to the starting position. You can progress this one to a non-supported or assisted version where you just put your hands on your hips, step on the thing, up slow tempo, pause, and then return to the starting position. This is tier 3, level 1. So we're going to do a side step. So with our hands on our waist, we're going to step to the side slow, and then return to the starting position. Make sure to keep your weight back in your heels as we're trying to emphasize the glutes, not the knees. Try to go farther out over time to make this more difficult, but slow tempo, think about loading in your hips. Level 2 is a banded slider, but we found a sock on cardboard works just as well. So a PT band around your ankles, support against the wall, press your leg out and back, and then return to the starting position. Go slow and controlled, and over time, if you can, take your hands off the wall and do it just with your body weight. Now these next 2 exercises are best done on a Pilates reformer, but here's 2 simple hacks that you can do so you don't have to have a reformer, which most of us don't. So with the band around our ankles, what we're gonna do, instead of sliding, we're just gonna rock our feet back and forth with our toes and our heels to get spread, pause, and then rock our feet back and forth towards midline. So again, heels, toes, heels, toes, heels, toes. Feel tension on our hips, and then toes, heels, toes, heels, toes, heels. Level 4 is a squat version. So with that PT band, we're gonna walk our feet back out to that same position. So we have a wide stance, feeling tension in the outside of our hips. Squat down, 1, 2, 3, slow tempo, and then return to the starting position. Make sure you use your hips and don't overload your knees, and increase depth as you feel like you can. For the last exercise, we're gonna give you 3 advanced versions. So this one is gonna be the slow tempo single leg deadlift. So let's say that my left hip is the painful one. We're gonna stabilize ourselves with our hand on the wall and hold a moderate weight in our opposite arm. And we're gonna think about pushing our right leg back, really pivoting at our hips, not just bending your back. You don't wanna feel tension here. You wanna feel all the tension in that hip and that hamstring. So in that position with some light resistance against the wall, keeping our foot in neutral and try to keep tall on that hip, we're gonna press our foot back, bending both our leg back and our torso forward slow, feel tension on that hip, and then stand up using your glutes and your hips, not your back. Again, initiate not with your head, push your leg back, go as far as you can, slow tempo, pause, and then stand up. It should not look like this and then like that, or when you're that down position, don't let your torso come up first. Pull with your hips so your leg and torso move simultaneously. Slow tempo reverse lunge. So we're trying to emphasize the hip, not the knee. So again, with that small weight, we're gonna load our left leg. So what we're gonna do is take a step back, keeping our torso vertical. We're gonna drop slowly down, slow, pause, and then stand up. You wanna feel it in the hip, so you may have to go back a little bit farther, but it's really important that we step back to load the hip, down, 1, 2, 3, pause, and stand up. Again, you wanna feel tension in the hip, not the back, so don't go down and bend your back and lift up. Make sure your back is out of it. Step back, drop down, pause, go up. In that side lying leg raise, we're gonna put a pillow between our legs so our leg doesn't collapse in. And for this one, we're only gonna do the affected side up. So if my right hip's painful, I'll lay on my left side, but I'm not gonna flip around because that's just gonna compress that hip. So with our feet straight and the band around our ankle, with our feet neutral, we're gonna press up, 1, 2, 3, pause, and then return to the starting position. Make sure you're against the wall so your heel stays back, so it goes straight up. What's common is you'll bring your leg forward. We don't want that. So again, tension over your hip, 1, 2, 3, pause, and then return to the starting position. People often will ask, are scans needed for this? So let's look at that. So x-rays are helpful for ruling out other conditions like arthritis. It won't help with this. Ultrasound can look at the bursa and tendons. Unfortunately, they're pretty deep, so they can be hard to localize sometimes, especially if the patient's overweight. So it's kind of hit or miss. The best is MRI to look directly at the bursa and tendons. It is less affected by patient size, but it is more expensive, so there's trade-offs there.